Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Girls on Track UK webinar managed by Motorsport UK. My name is Amber Jones. I'm a motorsport presenter, host, and racing driver, media trainer. You might see me working from Formula One all the way to grassroots go-karting. So I do a little bit of everything and now diving quite deep into helping aspiring presenters who want to work into motorsport as well and training them. Like I said, today's session is all about motorsport medicine, where I will be speaking to Dr. Claire Morden, who should be joining later on, but she's a very busy lady, like all the fantastic ladies that we've got today. So hopefully she'll join us in 10-20 minutes or so, but I'll give you a little heads up before she joins. Dr. Sam Harmer and paramedic Jean Cragg. So on their journeys about their current roles and venturing into the motorsport industry, hopefully giving all of you some advice into these roles or just a bit of behind the scenes if you want to know a little bit more. Before we jump into the webinar, just want to let you know that it is being recorded and it will be made available after the event on the Girls on Track UK community Facebook page and on the Motorsport UK TV. All past webinars can be found on Motorsport UK TV. Also, we do have a Q&A function as well, so please send in your questions. I will look at them throughout the webinar and hopefully we do have time to answer them as well. So please use that function. It is there for a reason. So now it's time to get into our fantastic guests. So please can we go round, introduce ourselves and sort of what your role actually entails. So Sam, we'll start with you.
Hi everybody, my name's Sam. I am an intensive care and emergency medicine consultant. I work in Oxford. I work at Silverstone. I'm the Deputy Chief Medical Officer there. In general, I'm a motorsport doctor. I work either trackside or in the medical centre. And I also go and do quite a few shifts down at Santa Pod Raceway. So I get to see a lot of drag racing. And yeah, I'm a really big advocate for new people coming into motorsport and seeing their perspective on how we do things, because we can all learn from each other. And it's one of the reasons I love the motorsport medicine community, is that you get people from all walks of life come together and we learn from each other.
Super interesting as well, because like you said there, Sam, you see all different types of motorsport. It's not just single seaters, it's drag racing, it could be GT cars. So really interesting. And Jean, could you also give yourself a little introduction and what your role actually entails?
Yes, good evening, everybody. So my name's Jean Cragg. I'm a paramedic. I qualified as a paramedic in 1990. I worked in the NHS for 30 years. And I've been involved in motorsport for about that length of time as well. Initially in motor rallying. I've also covered bike racing, the TT and the Manx Grand Prix. I've worked with the British Superbike team for a number of years. And I've worked for Silverstone for quite a number of years. And as Sam's already said, it's very much like a family. We all come from different walks of medicine, but coming together, we bring a huge mix of skills, talents and experience, which can help the competitors enjoy their day's motorsport.
It is amazing. Again, like I say, all the different types of motorsport. And I do love that we spoke about this before as well, before we started the webinar, that motorsport is the traveling circus and it is the family. You make friends, you all travel the world or the UK or wherever you are together. It's a community-based sport is what I love the most about it. But I would love to know how you both got into these roles and then sort of moved over to the motorsport side of things. So Sam, starting with you.
So how I got into motorsport is actually quite amusing because it's changed since I've been in motorsport. I applied to join when I thought I'd gained the right skill set. So in medicine, I had completed an initial stage where I thought, oh, now I'm probably a useful pair of hands. I'll apply. And nobody even replied to my email. I'd sent my CV and clearly it went unopened. And then a few years later, I was actually at Silverstone with my whole family. And a friend of mine worked in the medical center. They were a nurse and they messaged me and said, oh, are you at Silverstone? And I said, yeah. They said, pop in and say hi. And I popped in to say hello. And then the person that ran it at the time was like, oh, you're a doctor? Why have you never applied to work with us? And I said, well, I did, but you never replied. And things have really changed since then. Now we have many applicants throughout the year, and we endeavour to reply to people. And then what we'll do is once or twice a year, we will have a day where we invite people that are interested to come and have a look around, and then we'll sort of see if everyone's a fit, and then we will go forward from there. So it's changed so much in the last however many years. But my path was a little bit of a sort of stumbling path. I had been a doctor for a little while, and then I came into it from the medical side in motorsport.
So I guess for anyone looking to get into more of the medical side of motorsport, would you suggest that they would have to study medicine first and then make that transition, or can you kind of do it at the same time, specialising only in motorsport?
Well, I don't think you can specialise only in motorsport because there's no formalised training pathway. But that doesn't discourage people from very early doors in their career from getting involved, from showing enthusiasm, from doing some e-learnings. There's been these fantastic initiatives in the last few years where we've seen people putting out e-learning modules that are available to the general public in motorsport medicine. They're available on the FIA website. There's Motorsport UK webinars like this, and then there's access to all sorts of information on the internet. So you can do that whilst you're studying medicine or whatever you're studying as one of the allied health professionals, because doctors are not the only people. As you can see, we've got Jean here, and we're a medical community. It's not just doctors. And there is a keen interest from Motorsport UK as well to have these people come and observe and get involved, so they have proper perspective on what they're getting into as well, because you don't want to enter something thinking it's going to be all excitement all the time. You probably need to understand that a lot of motorsport medicine is actually not being as active as you would be in your NHS role.
Yeah, and I actually really like that you said that, obviously specific to medicine, but I think as motorsport as a whole, there is this sort of idea that a lot of people have of what that specific job is going to look like in motorsport, and then you get into it and it's the reality of, oh, I didn't know this happens, and oh, it's long days and it's cold weather, and it's maybe not as, I guess in your role, glamorous isn't the correct word, but some of the roles seem to be really glamorous, and you get into it and go, oh wow, it's still amazing, but it's not what I expected. So I love that you kind of picked up on that. And Jean, with yourself then, how did your role as a paramedic come into fruition, specifically then with motorsport?
I think I first became involved because I used to do radio operator on motor rallying. And then as I developed with my medical career and became a paramedic, I was aware that paramedics could actually work with the rescue units, covering various stages around the rallies. So I applied, and I was invited to go along and have a look what the event was like, just as Sam was saying. And I was hooked, really. I would describe myself as a petrol head. Mm-hmm. I used to be a biker, but I've given that up now. And in relation to the bikes, I went across to the Isle of Man on my motorbike as a spectator, got talking to the guys who were working there, and I was invited to come across the following year and actually work there. And the rest was history, really. It just then became 6 weeks a year with the TT, because there's a week's practice, a week's racing. Same with the Manx Grand Prix. And also there's another event called the Southern 100, which is a short circuit, still road circuit in the Isle of Man. And that's a week as well. So it just became an annual booking in my diary. With Silverstone, as Sam has already alluded to, it was a little bit of a closed shop initially. But again, I was invited by somebody I knew to come along. And I thought, oh, this is great. This is really interesting. It's another element of motorsport. And there's so much variety at Silverstone. As you've already mentioned, we can have motor clubs hiring the circuit for a track day. We can have members of the public coming along and having a bike track day. We've got private companies hiring the circuit for testing, and we'll soon also have a karting circuit. So, on any one day at Silverstone, you could have possibly 4 or 5 different events running, all of which need their own medical dedicated cover.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as Sam's already said, it's really nice to see the young doctors who are still training showing an interest, applying to come along and observe at Silverstone. And we encourage people because they are the future of motorsport. So it's lovely to see that element of interest and enthusiasm. And I think, we're all very keen at Silverstone to help those people and hopefully guide them towards a medical future as well.
Exactly. I think, you've hit the nail on the head there, that it's amazing to see people be interested, I think, in this side of motorsport, because, we mentioned before again that the sort of presenting or the media side of things from marketing or social media marketing, engineers, drivers are the things that are mostly talked about in motorsport. The things that aren't really talked about is the medical side of things. We don't speak about it. And, I do think we take it for granted sometimes that, these operations, these races could not go ahead without the people like yourselves, doing the behind the scenes, helping people out if there's an injury, whatever it is. So I think it should be spoken about and there should be so much interest in it. Some people might not really know what happens. So these webinars are so important to say, what does this role entail? What actually happens? So speaking on that, could you sort of break down maybe a typical weekend or a typical day on one of those days on the weekend of what your role would actually look like?
Yes, of course. So for me personally, I could either be working in a response car, either on my own or with a doctor, or I could be working as part of an ambulance crew with a colleague. So we would come into work, we would check our vehicles and kit, we would issue drugs to our vehicles. We're then given a briefing of what radio channels we're on, what positions are being covered for the event, the all-important thing, which is if there's a lunch break and when it is. And off we go. And then basically we will be listening on the radio at trackside. You may sometimes see vehicles moving about. That's not necessarily because we're moving patients. At the smaller events, we swap corners during the event just to make the day a little more interesting. And to be honest, I mean, it can be a long day, but I always think if we're doing nothing, that's great, because the people on track are enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for us. We don't go there to work, but everybody is available and poised and ready should there be any sort of issue on the track, or within the crowd, of course, because for events like Silverstone, there are thousands and thousands of people there. It's like bringing a small town into an enclosed arena, and they all bring their normal medical problems with them, and they forget their medication or they forget what medication they take. So although the track resources are basically separate from the public resources, obviously if there was an incident nearby, we could be sent to initiate treatment whilst the other resources are coming to us and to give an update on exactly what the problem is. So every day is different.
Yeah.
And it's always enjoyable.
And again, I think it's good that you highlight, you're actually not just looking after the on-track action, it's the whole event, it is the spectators as well, which I think, again, people kind of forget about that. Same question to you, really, Sam. What does a typical, I know it's really hard to answer these questions because it's completely different and it's always reacting to the scenario at hand, but what could a typical day or weekend look like for you working at a motorsport event?
It depends where I am, really, and it depends what my role is. So as Jean alluded to, we can move around within our medical roles. So if I'm working as a trackside doctor, my role is not that dissimilar to what Jean described. The only difference would be that I would choose what drugs I wanted to take with me, and I would check those out with the nurses or whoever was in the medical center. And I would then check whatever equipment I had with my paramedic. and then we would go out to wherever we're due to go. But if I was working as the chief medical officer of the event, then my day would pan out slightly differently. So when I come first into the circuit, whether that be somewhere else or at Silverstone, we would usually meet and have a briefing with the event manager. Depending on the size of the event, we might have a safeguarding lead present. We'd have somebody from safety, we'd have a rescue team. So that's probably something we should touch on, is that medicine is not just us. So it's not just doctors, paramedics, medics. There's so many other people involved in that. So we are sort of a medical safety rescue team, and our team just gets larger and larger when you include more and more people into it. So we'd touch base with the people from that. We'd all talk about, anything that had happened recently, but we also might try and squeeze in a little bit of training, because these briefings, prior to these briefings, it's actually the perfect time to simulate what might happen, or to refresh some skills, or to show where a piece of kit might go if people are unfamiliar with it. And it gives us an opportunity to build team spirit as well. So that's what we would do usually in the start of the day. And then throughout the day, I might see patients coming in who are members of the public or who are team members, especially with a big team that travel. Sometimes they don't have the opportunity to go and see their general practitioners, or to get their foot looked at after last week they dropped an engine on it, or there's general aches and pains like Jean alluded to. We might have to deal with these as well. And then we will stop for our lunch break. lunch is always a big discussion at any event. And then in the afternoon we'll do similar, see patients, debrief patients, and then if it's a licensed event, we also have certain statistical forms that we need to fill in. So MS UK have a MedStats form so that we can collate data on what sorts of things are happening. We send that back to the MS UK team, and we may get some people together to do a little debrief at the end of the day if there's been an incident. And then we're bound by certain regulations, so we have to keep a certain amount of medical staff on after the event has finished. And some of us will stay on site and then pack up and go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, so it could be long days, like we mentioned beforehand, if you do have to stay on site for a little bit longer. And you mentioned about the training potentially on some days. And I did want to touch on when you obviously decided to start doing more the motorsport medical side of things. Is there a different training process that you have to go through aside from, your experience just being a doctor already?
No, there's not, or there hasn't been traditionally. I think this space is changing though. Certainly the events sector is becoming more regulated. And we as a team like to keep our skills up to date. There are quite a few people within the events sector that are either semi-retired from the NHS frontline work, or retired, or they only do events. And as a result, we do work on continued professional development as a team. So we're actually at Silverstone, we'll be hosting one next year in February, a CPD day we call it, which is where people can attend lectures and updates on clinical practices, and discuss openly opportunities to learn. So no, there's no recognized training pathway. Obviously certain skills are slightly more relevant to motorsport. So historically there used to be dermatologists, doctors who work mainly with skin, or doctors who work mainly in women's health, who would work in motorsport. And perhaps over the last decade, they've leaned more towards the doctors and paramedics and everybody who work with the acute settings. But that doesn't mean that we would discourage people from other specialties to wanting to get involved. It just means that we may have to support those people with maintaining a certain skill set.
Yeah, there might be some smaller tweaks maybe made, obviously depending on the environment that you will be in. Is that the same for you as well, Jean? Obviously, I imagine it's basically very similar. Or did you have to do some extra training to sort of be on site with motorsport events?
No, as Sam said, your qualification was the only thing people required. However, now there are specialist doctors in pre-hospital emergency care. So if they know at a fairly early stage in their career that's what they want to specialise in, they can look towards doing specialist courses. Most of those lead towards being doctors who work on helicopters, for instance. But certainly CPD wise, even though I've retired from the NHS, it's still part of my professional requirement to hold the qualification of paramedic, that I must annually prove continuing professional development. So some of the things we have to do annually, like safeguarding, resuscitation, those sort of basic core skills are every 12 months. But then if you want to add additional skills on, there are loads of opportunities out there for online CPD. And also meetings, conferences. There are lots of things available for you to be able to not only continue your skills, but actually develop them. Because the one great thing in medicine that I've found over 40 plus years now is the development that takes place is phenomenal. When I think from when I first started as a paramedic, what I could do then and what I can do now, and the range of drugs and equipment and skills I have now, it's light years away. And I'm delighted to say that those opportunities are readily available if you look for them, and that there is no limit on your skill set.
Well, I'm in the world of digital media now. It is so true. You can just log on and do a course somewhere and get a certificate towards the end of it and put in all this time doing e-learning. But that actually takes me really nicely onto a question that we did get sent in about, you know, technology now supporting medicine. You've spoken about it quite briefly there, but if you could dive in slightly deeper. So how has it changed? You know, you said years ago you probably didn't have access to certain drugs and all this development's been put into the medical side of things. But also with technology, how are we seeing this change? Is it enhancing safety and what you do?
Yes, it's changed in so many ways. The type of equipment we have available to us, the range of drugs, and I would just quote sort of pain relief as an amazing option. We've got so many different drugs that we can actually utilise for pain relief for patients. And in pre-hospital care, whether it's motorsport or any other event, pain relief is such an enormous humanitarian thing that we can give to patients. And we like to do this before we start to treat them. So things like monitoring equipment, all our vehicles have got complete sets of monitoring equipment, whether that's cardiac, blood pressure, oxygen saturations, 12-lead ECGs. So heaven forbid, but if we do have a patient that's perhaps trapped in a vehicle, whilst the rescue services that are with us, we do train with them as well, whilst they're extricating the patient for us, we can be examining them, taking observations, giving them pain relief whilst they're still in the vehicle. And then the whole team is working together to give best treatment to that patient prior to them arriving at our medical centre for ongoing care. And then obviously transfer, it could be by helicopter if it's a very serious injury, or it could be by a land ambulance to our nearest trauma centres.
So it has changed a lot throughout the years of development and technology. We are seeing those changes, which obviously is fantastic because it helps massively. And the job must be so challenging at times. Even you just speaking there about the different scenarios that could happen. Sam, I did want to ask you, what are the most rewarding parts of the job? Because yes, it is so challenging, but what are some of the highlights that maybe some people don't know about?
I'm actually just going to follow up on something Jean just said, because she touched on some things that have really changed, that have changed so much. So she's talking about the monitoring that we've got, but then also the monitoring, the way technology has changed our interface in medicine. There's telemetry now, so we can transmit from the gloves of drivers to us things in medical information about the drivers. And then there's also really interesting, we can assess how much g-force a driver has had exerted on them when they've had a crash, and that tells us so much about what we think about injury patterns. And the other way I think technology has interfaced with medicine is that certainly at Silverstone, we can see every aspect of our racetrack, and we can see and watch in slow motion the mechanism of the impact of the trauma. And then we can see how the person gets out of the vehicle or off the bike. And we can assess from that what we already think about their neurological status, which is, it's changed. It's made me a better clinician working in motorsport, because I'm a trauma team leader. I can correlate with the mechanism of injury, with the pattern of injury, much better, having been able to put those two together. And also from working so much more closely with my paramedic and emergency care colleagues, I have to say that I'm better at listening to their handovers when they arrive in my trauma center and they're handing over. If ever I see a colleague who's not listened properly to what the paramedic is handing over from what they've seen, it's that technology interface that has really taught me. Paramedics have taken a photo of the car for a reason, because they're showing you what intrusion there is into the cabin, and what intrusion there is into the cabin will determine what the mechanism of injury is on the patient. And that's the sort of, for me, the big changes, even in my time, which isn't as long as Jean's. Even in my time, I've seen that technology change the way I approach my patients.
And that is amazing, because there's all this data that you didn't have before that is now enhancing you, but then also helping you without having access to the data. It's taught you so much as well. So it's kind of doing two different things at once, which is just phenomenal, which is amazing to obviously hear your perspective on that. And then, yeah, going back to some of those highlights in your job, then maybe the tech, maybe the data that you've got now, it's made it a little bit easier. But yeah, some of the most rewarding parts of your job.
So the rewarding parts really are kind of coming back to that. It's that time learning from my paramedic colleagues and my emergency care assistant colleagues and my tech colleagues and my nursing colleagues. I feel like I have become a better emergency medicine and intensive care consultant, because I have heard what's happened from the other end all the way through. It's seeing the drivers when they come back. So it's commonly open available that Colin Turner, Formula Ford race a few years ago in the Water Haze, had a big incident, and it's all out in the social media. He had a big campaign to get him back behind the wheel. And this gentleman is just inspiring other racing drivers, because he's had this big collision, this big incident, and yet he's got back behind the wheel. And that was due to the care of an amazing team. They were just phenomenal. And you've seen the likes of Billy Munger as well. I mean, he is out there doing triathlons. That is really why we do what we do, because these people may have big collisions, but they prove that they are stronger than the collision that could have broken them, and we're only there to support them on their patient journey. And then yes, it's the family side. We have barbecues at the back of our medical center. my children are growing up there. My children sometimes feels like they're being raised by my colleagues at the medical center. Yeah, I love the family aspect, the reward of seeing people have bigger impacts and then get back out there and do more amazing things. And the technology is a bit of a buzz because it's definitely made me better, and I think it's made the sport safer.
Wow. And I do love that, honestly. I think motorsport from every aspect really is that community, that family, that just sense of bringing people together for the passion of the sport, for caring about people. And 100%, I definitely agree with you. Obviously, if I'm not in your role, but the most rewarding part would be seeing people that you've helped, that your team has helped together. You know, any injury that I've had, I can say, yes, it's the person that gets through the injury, but you know, having the people around you and having the doctors, the paramedics, and whoever's helping you get back on that journey, that is just going to help massively than you going through that solo. So having the team, even if, you know, you've done the hard work, you've done all the medical side of things, just having that person there, be there with you, talk you through it. You know, this job is very serious, but the people behind it, the human beings behind it are so amazing. So yes, you're helping them from the medical point of view, but just who you are and being lovely people and loving family and community also will help someone going through such a hard time. Jean, I do want to obviously talk to you about this as well, about the most rewarding parts. However, you know, you have an MBE, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's
That must be a fantastic, really rewarding part of the job afterwards. Also, I've been told that you were essentially one of the first females involved in pre-hospital care for motorsport and the first female instructor in the ambulance service as well. So all really cool things.
yes, a lot of firsts there, aren't there? I told you I was very old. Yeah, the ambulance service has been a wonderful career. Certainly when I started, as I say, there were very few females in the profession. So it was difficult. And I'm sure if you spoke to people in the fire service and the police, they would have exactly the same thoughts that I had. I seriously thought, what am I doing in this job? Because some people made it patently obvious they didn't want females in the role. And it was almost like you had to work twice as hard to prove yourself. But I'm delighted to say now that the actual balance between male and females in the ambulance service, the scales have tipped the other way now. There are more females than males working in there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's the same for Sam in hospitals. But yes, I was given my MBE, which I'm extremely proud of, by Prince Charles, King Charles as he is now, and that was given for services to healthcare. One of the other things I did was be involved with the National Police Aid Charity. I still am involved with them, actually. I'm a trustee of it. But we used to drive humanitarian aid out to Bosnia and Croatia during the Balkans War, which was the early 90s. So we did 7 trips out to the area to take things like medication, clothing, things for schools, medicines, anything we could get hold of that would be of use. And nowadays, just very quickly, we send things mainly to Gambia and Zambia by containers. So school uniforms, school kit, that sort of thing, medicine still.
And that is so lovely, honestly, the work that you both do. I'm so happy that, you know, you get rewarded for it, whether it's personal achievements or an MBE or the amazing work that you do obviously does not go unnoticed. So it's really cool to hear some of the rewarding parts of it. But I do want to chat about the challenges as well, because of course it is a very challenging job, a very physically and mentally demanding job. So Jean, if you wanted to touch on maybe some of the harder parts that you have overcome, obviously.
You always have to have in the back of your mind that there's the potential that people can be critically injured and also killed, sadly. Motorsport is dangerous, as we all know. And the thing is now, there are so many safety devices for the drivers. The vehicles are incredibly strong, well-structured. The sort of rallying things I do, I mean, these guys have 5-point harnesses, they've got full roll cages, they've got automatic fire extinguishers. But when you are in the middle of a forest, it can be a very long way from any medical backup when it does go wrong. One of my most recent interesting jobs was in one of the forests in Wales, where a rally car went off the edge of a rally stage down a 100-foot drop. So I was put on a rope by the rescue crew and went down to see the rally crew, who were already being supported by some marshals who'd gone down there. And basically dealt with the patients, got them back up. They weren't seriously injured, but it was only because of the strength of the vehicles, things like the HANS device, as you'll know, that holds the head and stops it hyperflexing. They finished up with, I think the worst injury was a couple of fractured ribs. But you always have to have in your mind that it can go very wrong. And I think if I bring that back more to the Silverstone events, certainly with some of the historic vehicles, some of them are very exposed, as you'll know yourself. And if they do roll over, it can be quite difficult and potentially produce quite nasty injuries. So it's just having that awareness that what the event is that you're dealing with, what the possible implications are. But if you do have a serious incident, your training just takes over and you get on with it. You don't have time to think about it. I'm not saying you don't think about it afterwards, because you'd be pretty inhuman if you didn't. But this is where the team element and the family element comes in as well. We can all chat to each other. We know, we can take anybody to one side and say, did we do the right thing there? Could we have done anything else? You're constantly able to debrief and receive support from your colleagues, which I think, even in the worst possible scenario, it's great to know that support is there for everybody.
And it's going back to that community value that, you said beforehand. So obviously in the harder times, it also helps in those sort of situations as well. Sam, would you say that's similar to you? Sort of the things that Jean said are the struggles, the challenges of the job. Would you say it's quite similar for you?
I think because my motorsport exposure is varied, everyone has a different challenge. So definitely the challenge of a Formula One race at Silverstone is massively different to the challenges of a small event down at Centerpod. And I agree with what Jean was saying. Sometimes my biggest challenge is that we're a team of experts. We're not an expert team all the time. So when I say that, what I mean is everybody has their own skill set and their own perception of what is their role, of what they do, but they aren't necessarily well rehearsed together. And so sometimes that can be a challenge in motorsport. And there's a lovely intensive care consultant from Scotland who works a lot in motorsport. And he says we're flash teams. We're a team of experts. Excuse me. But we're not necessarily an expert team.
So that's the thing. It's all sort of people coming together. Sometimes it doesn't gel as well as maybe what you'd think, because there are different skill sets and someone's doing this job and that job, and maybe, what do they say, too many cooks in the pan or the kitchen or whatever the saying is. It's sort of that kind of situation going on, which I guess people don't really know about that unless you're in that situation.
Yeah, and even locally, things will be different in different hospitals, and that doesn't mean anyone's wrong. So in medicine, I always joke, you can ask 10 doctors the same question, they'll give you 10 different answers and none of them are wrong. It's just their perspective. And I have this sort of odd perspective in medicine, in that I work in A&E, but I'm also an ICU consultant. So within a hospital setting, I sort of see everything that comes in through the front door and then the sickest of the sick at the other end. And so my perspective is both sides, but if I only saw what came in through A&E, or I only saw the other side, I wouldn't necessarily have slight rounded picture. But I don't genuinely think that that's why we're a team. So we have to just, if I was to say the most important thing in motorsport as a medic, it's communication. So even though you're a flash team, a team of experts, not an expert team, if you've got good comms, then the scenarios usually fold out better. Even when it's a scary, horrible scenario, if you've got good communication, things tend to fold out better. And that's what we've seen all the time in trauma, is that the incidents that go poorly are usually incidents where communication has fallen down.
And I think that's for every scenario, isn't it, really, in life? How can you gel with people? How can you work together efficiently? You have to be communicating. It can't be one person's doing this over there and we don't know what's going on. It's that constant communication. Same in motorsport, the communication with the drivers and the engineers and the pit team and the people that are at the HQ. They have to be in constant communication. Otherwise, it just won't come together. I do want to answer some questions that we have been sent in. So my last question is, what advice would you give to young women who want to combine their career in healthcare and in motorsport? So starting off with you, Sam.
I'd say do it. There's no reason not to. And, the only challenge to doing things now is yourself, because there's opportunity out there. There's doors opening. And some people told me, oh, you can't do A&E and ICU and have a family and then do motorsport as well. Well, yeah, you can, because here I am. I have 3 daughters. I have a role in motorsport. I have a wonderful job in Oxford with the most amazing clinicians. And these people have all become my friends over the time. So I think do it. They can combine your life, whatever you want to be, whether that's motorsport, equestrianism, if you want to do any of those other big events, medicines and sports, and you've got a passion for it. If you have a passion for something, you'll be better at it.
I love that. There are no limitations. Just go for it, go head first, and obviously see what happens. And like both of your stories, that sometimes it's not the path that you actually imagined. Maybe it's you spoke to a person one day and they said, hey, do you want to come down to this race? And do you want to do this? And you find yourself in a job in motorsport, or just attending, or now having a massive love for something that you never imagined. So I 100% reiterate that advice there. Just go for it and then see what happens, really. And Jean, what about yourself?
Yeah, don't listen to people who say you can't do that, whatever that applies to, as Sam said. But put yourself out there, go to conferences, talk to people, contact organisations. Silverstone are going to probably kill me for this, but for goodness sake, if you want to come and have a look at us, please write to us, contact us.
Do. I completely agree, Jean.
Oh, thank you, Sam.
So
we'll try and arrange a day where you can come and see us and be shown round, and come and have a taster. You'd be very welcome.
We do encourage it, don't we? We've had plenty. We've had people come up to the track on numerous occasions, and this isn't a Silverstone webinar. I just feel like Silverstone's quite a good example about females in the motorsport space.
Yeah.
If you look at our circuit, our chief operations officer is female, our head of safety is female. We have plenty of females rocking it at Silverstone, but that doesn't mean Silverstone's the only place. Apply to your local circuit. And that's it's not just about the big opportunities in motorsport. That's not why I do it. I love the little series that Jean alluded to earlier, like the 750 MC. Who doesn't love a Mighty Mini? And I love down at the pod. If you go down to the pod, you can walk through the paddock. You can see these amazing engines. And we should really talk about the fact that there's female representation in drag racing, because it was a woman who won the European Championships this year. And, there's loads of people. The operations team down at the pod is also female. So motorsport has got lots of females. This is not an exclusive space anymore.
Exactly. We're seeing it change massively. I remember growing up in the motorsport scene. I was the only girl at the track, and you're looking around, you're trying to find other female staff members, and it was very limited. Whereas now it's more open, it's more accessible. You know, we are inviting and making a better space for more girls and more females to work in this. And, you know, people like yourselves on this webinar, we're talking about it, we're encouraging more people, and you're the faces for it, of women working in motorsport spaces. So that's all my questions, but I do want to get to the questions that we have been sent in. Really great question about mental health. We've not really touched on it. So are there any mental health specific roles within motorsport medicine? And either of you can answer this.
Not as far as I'm aware. I'm going to back that straight back to Sam.
So there are psychological support for certain racing drivers. I think there's quite famously drivers that have their psychological support teams around them. There aren't currently mental health roles within our team, but that doesn't mean you can't create that space. So Jean was the first paramedic instructor in the country that was female. So you go and create that space. I am one of the first emergency medicine and cardiothoracic intensive care consultants in the country. That split of job didn't exist before. So I think you can create a space if you see the opportunity for it. Go out there and make it happen, like Jean said earlier.
It is true. I definitely think we're seeing that more now, I think, in this world of these jobs that weren't things before in the past because they weren't spoken about or they just weren't accessible. You know, if you look at maybe content creation wasn't a thing 20 years ago, now it's an actual job. And the same with mental health. It wasn't spoken about as widely as it is now. So I think what you're saying there is like perfectly correct, that if it's maybe not a job now, potentially it could be something that you look into, that you open up that discourse and there's a role for you there. We have been sent in a question here about injury rehab. For a student looking to get involved in motorsport injury rehab teams, how would you recommend getting involved in motorsport as an AHP?
I can only speak from my experience with British Superbike team that we had physios who were part of our team. So they would deal with riders who were actually at the circuit, perhaps just needed, you know, a little bit more stretching, flexibility treatment before they were signed off to race. But I'm not sure certainly I don't know of any from rallying. Sam, can you help with that one? Is there anything Silverstone-wise or race circuit-wise you know of?
Which allied health professionals are we focusing on specifically?
I'm assuming it was physios because it was rehabilitation, but it could have been an OT, couldn't it?
I think there should be a role for it because we focus a lot in motorsport discussing only the drivers. But actually, so I live here in Silverstone, and so my daily school run is talking to the wives or the dads who are doing the school run, who are very much involved in motorsport. And so you've got to think about things like chair height for an engineer when they're sat working. You've got to think about things like repetitive strain injury in people that are doing certain mechanics every day, or rehabilitation for physiotherapy for people who've maybe got a shoulder strain from the repetitive mechanical or engineering perspective. So motorsport is not just about the drivers. We love to talk and think about the drivers, but just as much as I'm imagining you right now, Amber, in your sector, you've got, you know, photographers and video people and all these people that I don't know about that maybe you'll do another webinar on. In medicine, our team is bigger than what people perceive. People think of doctors, nurses, paramedics, techs, emergency care assistants. But what about our lovely cleaning lady who comes in and cleans out the kitchen for us when we've had our really important lunch? And our lovely administrators who sit at the front desk and book every patient in, or the person who comes and locks up or keeps us secure at night. Teams are so much bigger than we think of in motorsport. And I think, yes, there should be a role for OTs, physios, allied health professionals, speech and language. If people have had coughs and colds and they can't communicate with people, or if they've got vocal cord dysfunction. I think all allied health professionals should be invited into the sector. I don't know how they get invited in, and I don't know how they access it, but I do think this space isn't exclusive to just us as doctors, paramedics, etc.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Sam. I do want to now bring this sort of webinar to a bit of a close, but are there any last pieces of advice that you could both give to any of the girls watching this now? Just in general, what's the overall arching advice that you would give to someone?
Motorsport is a great thing to be involved in. There are so many different facets. We've mentioned a few today, but grassroots motorsport desperately need people to support them. Everybody wants to come and work at big tracks, but if you can, and I think Sam mentioned this, go and talk to your local track. Go and ask them if you can help them for a day, see what they do. Just start getting some grassroots motorsport experience that then when you do move on, or first of all, that could actually give you a clue as to what, if you like it, if you want to continue as part of it, and, you know, set yourself a goal. Don't be put off by anybody. It's a great thing to be involved with. Great fun.
I say that to so many people, that if I get any young girls or young boys say to me, you know, oh, I really want to be a Formula One presenter, and I say, my best advice is go to your local track, start off from you know, the beginning, the entry point into the sport. And I think whether it's they want to be, you know, working in the medicine side, whether they want to work in the presenting side, the engineering side, you have to start somewhere. And yes, your goal might be Formula One or something really extravagant, the pinnacle of the sport, but don't forget about grassroots. Grassroots is where you learn everything, and like you say, it's more open, it's more accessible. You mentioned at Santapod, open paddocks, you can go and chat to people, whereas in Formula One, you can't do that. Everything's very closed, very high security, you know, it's super stressful environments that they're not just going to let you walk into a garage. So 100% go to your local tracks, meet people, network. I love that you said that, Jean, because I would say the exact same thing. And Sam, any last piece of advice?
Do it because you want to do it, and be passionate about what you're doing, enjoy it, and enjoy every aspect of it. Even if it is a cold, miserable day and you've been expected to sign on at 6 a.m, look for the joy in that day, because there'll be other people miserable that the sign-on time is 6. Grab a coffee together and chat about things, and enjoy it. And one thing I would say, recently I spoke to one of my idols, absolute idols in motorsport medicine. And they said to me, you're here because of your skill set, not because you're female. Things have changed and your skill set is relevant, and that's why you're here. And that sort of really hung home to me, because when I think about how times have changed over the last decade, we're all going into this and we're bringing different skills. And so somebody messaged earlier about allied health professionals coming into the sport. Bring your knowledge, bring your expertise, and don't do what I did when I first had no response to my email and think, oh, that's it, I'm done. Keep knocking at the door. If you feel like the door's been closed in your face, it's not necessarily that it's been closed. It may just be that whoever you've messaged is too busy to reply. Someday, if you keep coming along, you'll be welcomed in with open arms.
And it is so true. There are going to be those moments where, you know, oh, why aren't I getting the job? Why aren't I getting work experience? Why has someone not answered me on the email or the phone call, the messages, whatever it is? You put it perfectly. They might be really busy. They're probably working in a very busy environment. You're wanting to get into that. You'll realize that later on. Keep going. Don't give up. So I love the advice that you've both given there. Thank you so much for your time, because I know you have very, very busy schedules as well. Thank you so much to Girls on Track UK and Motorsport UK. The community is totally free to join. We have over 10k members now, and we would love for you to join us if you aren't. So the link will be going into the chat function as I say this. And once again, thank you so much to our amazing speakers.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you. Thanks, Jean. Nice to see you.
And you, Sam.
Bye, Amber. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
See you on circuit.